Good afternoon, friends. In lieu of number of recommendation made in 53rd GST Council meeting, CBIC has issued number of circulars. We are going to digest each of the circulars for ease of reference and understanding. The first circular which we are picking up, circular number 211, dated 26 June 2024. And it is pertaining to time limit to avail credit for such supply which is being received by you as a recipient from unregistered supplier, and that is subject to reverse charge liability. So importantly, for understanding this circular, let's take an example and then we will digest the provision, clarification, which is being inserted in this stated circular. If you are a recipient and you are procuring certain notified goods or services subject to reverse charge liability, let's say goods are falling under notification number 4/2017 under CGST, and for services, notified services 13/2017 CGST, notified services subject to RCM under section 9 subsection 3 of CGST Act. So being recipient, you need to discharge GST liability under reverse charge. And there may be some specified cases falling under section 9 subsection 4 of CGST Act, and that is applicable only for the real estate sector, where recipient, developer need to discharge the GST liability under reverse charge whenever their procurement exceeds the specified limit from unregistered supplier. So there are two questions. The first question, when you will pay such reverse charge liability as a recipient, when it is due? Second, what would be eligible document for you to availing credit, and what are the provision and condition prescribed for availing credit? Of course, under section 16 subsection 4, time limit to avail credit is on the basis of invoice or debit note. If you look at the provision from 1st October 2022, after the amendment is being made under section 16 subsection 4, then it would be earliest of due date 30th November of succeeding financial year. So 30th November following the end of relevant financial year for which we are talking about that you can avail credit, or due date of furnishing annual return, whichever is earlier. It is when amendment is being made in section 16 subsection 4 from 1st October 2022. Prior to that, due date of furnishing return under section 39 for the month of September following the end of relevant financial year, or due date of furnishing annual return, whichever is earlier. Having said that, now we have to understand, if you as a recipient procuring notified goods or services subject to reverse charge from unregistered supplier, so what is the eligible document you will avail credit? Which relevant financial year you need to consider to see that time limit criteria under section 16 subsection 4 is being satisfied? And then what is the repercussion if it is pertaining to the past financial year? So let's say we are standing in 24, and today when I'm recording on 27th of June 2024, you come across that there was some reverse charge liability which you need to pay for the financial year 1920. So it was for the financial year 1920. The question will come to your mind, can I pay now? can I pay this liability now and avail credit, whether permissible or not permissible? Quite obvious, this circular is providing the clarity. And even 53rd GST Council meeting, it is recommended also. As per the recommendation, clarification is being issued. What is being stated? Document, invoice is important or debit note is important for availing credit. But when unregistered supplier supplying that notified goods or services, what happened? He is raising invoice which is not recorded in GST. Neither he's filing GSTR1. So who will generate the invoice? It's a recipient. Under section 31, subsection 3, clause F, you are generating self-invoice to yourself. Whether it is an eligible document, of course, for 1920, you are generating self-invoice. Today is dated 27th of June 2024. So it is your eligible document to avail credit. Which year would be relevant for availing credit, satisfying the criteria of section 16, subsection 4? Is it 2019-20 or 24-25, in which you have raised self-invoice to yourself? And this circular is saying it is 24-25 financial year, relevant financial year, to look at the criteria satisfying the condition for time limit under section 16, subsection 4. Only condition as per rule 36, sub-rule 1, clause B, that you must pay your reverse charge liability. That too, along with interest. Quite obvious. Point of, time of supply when we talk about must have arisen. Point of taxation must have arisen. For an example, when you look at time of supply for reverse charge for the notified services, as per section 13, subsection 3 of CGST Act, it is earliest of due date of payment by the recipient, or date following the end of 60 days, whichever is earlier. And in case of associated enterprises, it is being stated date of entry or date of payment, whichever is earlier. So POT must have arisen in 1920, but you are paying now in 24-25. So reverse charge liability of 1920, you are paying now, credit is available on the basis of self-invoice generated by the recipient, and you are making payment, you are satisfying the condition of rule 36, sub-rule 1, clause B. But you need to pay along with interest because POT has arisen. Time of supply has arisen. So this interest at the rate of 18% per annum, and both RCM to be paid in cash and interest also need to be paid in cash. So RCM liability paid, you can avail credit, no problem. Relevant financial year would be 24-25 to satisfy the time limit under section 16, subsection 4. But interest is a cost. This credit is subject to other condition as per section 16 and 17. If it is barred credit for some region, even though you're paying the liability today, credit is not available. Having said this, circular is also clarifying a position that you were supposed to raise self-invoice in 1920 as a recipient, which you didn't do, you're doing now. So whether there would be any panel liability, of course, it is referring section 122. So I'm showing you some of the important para of this particular circular. Let me share the screen first. So if you look at this circular, as I said, it is providing clarification on time limit under section 16, subsection 4, in respect of RCM, reverse charge liability. of supplies received from unregistered person. That's what I've explained to all of you. It is talking about what would be the time limit as per section 16, subsection 4. Here, one more important aspect which you must take a note of it. This para, that there were certain representations submitted to CBIC. In some cases, where tax is payable under reverse charge by recipient, and such as where an activity is performed by overseas related person, foreign related person who is a provider, supplier of service to the entity located in India, recipient, related party, recipient located in India. No consideration is involved. But again, we have to understand the concept of deemed supply. Such an activity may not be considered as supply of service by concerned recipient in India, and accordingly no invoice is issued as well as no tax is being paid by said recipient under RCM in respect of same. So what happened? If you are paying such RCM liability now, whether you can pay now of 1920, can you avail credit? What would be eligible document? This is all clarifying, and later on, either on your own ascertainment or by audit. Some audit is happening, scrutiny is happening, and you are being asked to pay. So said recipient now issuing invoice, self-invoice, and paying the RCM liability along with interest, and want to claim ITC of such tax paid. So this representation was filed. It is being clarified, and what is being clarified? That self-invoice is the eligible document as per section 16, subsection 2, clause A, for recipient to avail credit. What is the next condition? Rule 36, sub-rule 1B, that you must pay up the liability before availing credit. That is what it is being explained. And section 16, subsection 4 provision, which I have already narrated, is being reproduced in this circular before amendment made by Finance Act 2022 and after Finance Act 2022. So 30th November was the effective change, you must be recalling. So what it is being stated, concluded that relevant financial year 24-25 to which invoice pertains today is dated for the purpose of time limit for availment of ITC would be relevant in such cases. And this 24-25 would be considered relevant financial year when you have issued the invoice for availing credit. Now, having said what, it is being further stated that recipient issuing self-invoice after time of supply of said supply, of course, 1920 POT must have arisen. You are paying now. Accordingly, he will be required to pay interest at the rate of 18%, that too in cash. Further, in cases where such delayed issuance of invoice by recipient, if there's a delay, of course there's a delay. It was pertaining to 1920. You're issuing 24-25. Then you may be liable for penal action under the provision of section 122. So what would be the penalty? Is it going to be 20,000 or amount equivalent to tax evaded? To my mind, section 122, subsection 3, relevant clause is D. When you fail to issue invoice, penalty amount prescribed is 50,000 rupees, 25,000 CGST, 25,000 is GST. So this is what the penalty can be levied. As per me, this is from unregistered supplier. What is not being stated here, let's discuss that component as well. If you are procuring a notified goods or services from registered supplier, and that is subject to RCM liability. reverse charge liability. So what happened? Of 1920, in 24-25, you come across that this was liability you were supposed to pay in 1920, पर आपने 1920 में पे नहीं किया. तो क्या आज आप पे कर सकते हैं और पे करके क्रेडिट ले सकते हैं? This is what the question all about. Can you pay now and avail credit? Whenever you are procuring from registered supplier, then quite obvious he must have raised the tax invoice. He must have ticked that tax to be paid under reverse charge by recipient while filing his GSTR1 and also getting auto-populated in two-way of the recipient. And recipient can see it was my liability which I'm supposed to pay in 1920 and I did not pay. I'm paying now in 24-25. Can I avail credit? This is the important question, right? This is what we all are discussing. In that case, you will not get credit because that invoice raised by registered supplier in 1920 would be the relevant document for availing credit of 1920. So as per section 16, subsection 4, your credit is barred by limitation. You will not get the credit. So this clarification is applicable only when you as a recipient paying RCM liability when you're procuring supply of notified goods or services from unregistered supplier. Hope this circular will ease your reference and digest pertaining to this reverse charge from unregistered supplier, corresponding liability, time of supply, and interest from both perspective, registered supplier and unregistered supplier. Stay tuned. Lot many. Thanks for watching. Thank you very much.